Is there still a chance for a two-state solution?
I think it's about time for the world to realize the Oslo paradigm failed on the 7th of October, and we need to build a new one. And in order to build a new one...
Does that new one include the Palestinians living in a state of their own? Is that what it includes?
I think the biggest question is, what type of Palestinians are on the other side? This is what Israel realized.
Do they have a state, though?
The answer is absolutely no.
So in my introduction, I said what many have suspected for years. What I should have said is what many have known for years and many have been trying to ignore. So we've known, we talked about for a long time on this show, that the party that Tzipi Hotovely is a member of, the governing party in Israel, they have no interest in a two-state solution. They say it all the time to their own population, but they try and put on a different face to the West. And that has meant that Western politicians and Western journalists have been able to pretend that Israel wants a two-state solution. Tzipi Hotovely is just confirming in English what we already knew, which I think was quite helpful. It has definitely shifted the dial when it comes to news coverage. The Israeli ambassador there was speaking to Sky's Mark Austin, and later in the week, Mark Austin decided to put those comments to the Palestinian ambassador to the UK, Hussam Zomlot.
No two-state solution, she says. After everything that has happened and is happening, do you envision an independent state of Palestine alongside the state of Israel?
I don't envision. This is reality. We are a people, and the people live on our land. We have legitimate representation and government. That is the PLO. Our platform is very clear. There is international consensus on the need that Israel ends its occupation that began in '67, and that a state of Palestine is established with Jerusalem as its capital, and a fair and legal resolution to the issue of refugees. Right. That interview with the Israeli ambassador should not have been shocking to you, Mark. I think what she said was not really the shocking part, because she has been saying this for a long time.
Right. Well,
and her government was saying this for a long time.
Right.
I'm really shocked that you were shocked, and the rest of the world, the UK government and everybody else was shocked. I mean, this has been happening for decades, Mark, not just by Israeli words,
right,
by Israeli deeds.
What I thought was really great about that interview, we're going to show you a bit more of it in a moment, but is, it's often the Palestinians who are put forward as, the extremists and the Israelis are the moderates. But then you've got two ambassadors, so one for the Palestinian Authority, one for Israel. And for Israel, she's saying, hell no, we don't want a two-state solution. That's crazy. That's out of the question. And then you've got the Palestinian ambassador who's saying, look, international law is that we want a two-state solution. Everyone says that, everything he's saying is just sort of, he sounds more like what the American president would say, He's sort of almost saying the Western consensus. Well, the Western consensus in terms of what they say, obviously the problem with the West when it comes to this issue is they say one thing and they do another. So they say they want a two-state solution, and then they give Israel unconditional backing while they make a two-state solution impossible. But I do think that sort of if you showed the British public, a picture of the Israeli ambassador and the Palestinian ambassador, and you sort of said to them, which of these two is the more extreme? I'm sure most would point to the Palestinians now, partly because of racism, presumably, but also because of what people have read about Israelis and Palestinians in the press. Then, if you showed them those interviews, I wonder what they would say afterwards. That'd be a very interesting social scientific experiment to do. Let's go back to that interview.
Her point is that everything changed on October the 7th, the murderous attack on October the 7th. And she's basically saying, why should we negotiate a two-state solution?
Yeah, because before the October the 7th, the two-state solution was being really implemented by her government. I mean, look at who she is. Just for example, she was the Minister of Settlements before she arrived to the UK as the ambassador. And Israel has increased its settlement building in the occupied West Bank by 500% while we were in the middle of the Oslo peace process to achieve a two-state solution. We signed the Oslo process in 1993. There were less than 120,000 Israeli illegal settlers. Today we're talking about 750,000 illegal settlers. The West Bank is dotted all over the place, and many commentators are saying Israel has succeeded to undermine the possibility of any two-state solution. The question, Mark, the question is, why the world has failed to take any action during all these years? The very people that they are bombarding in Gaza and displacing, you're talking about more than 2/3 of Gaza has been completely displaced. A reliving of the Nakba 75 years ago. And by the way, I'm from Gaza. I'm from Gaza. I know my family and my parents and grandparents. This is the first time in history that the same refugees are being made refugees again and again and displaced again and again.
Aaron, I want your thoughts on this. Who seems the more extreme out of the two interviews we've seen this week, the Israeli ambassador or the Palestinian one?
Well, Hateveli is clearly a fanatic. She's a lunatic and a fanatic. And Zomlot's clearly just an informed professional diplomat. But the conceit behind all of this, of course, is that you have to pretend that the Palestinians and the Gazans are irrational and hateful and spiteful. And of course, the Israelis are almost like Vulcans, these wise people. And it's a story we covered a while back, Michael, a few months ago now, when you had Kay Burley and Sky make things up about Hussam Zomlot. Make things up. They denigrated the man. They libeled him and slandered him because they didn't think anything would happen, right? You can say what you like about somebody if you don't think they're going to do much about it. And that seems to be the approach of much of the media in relation to Palestinian spokespeople. But clearly, once you see the man talking and hear what he says, he's perfectly reasonable. And the point in regards to the settlements is a huge one. The PLO, who of course were the signatories to the Oslo Accords, sort of quasi precursor to the Palestinian Authority, they are signatories to an agreement which basically was saying, it didn't say no more settlements, but the basic premises were that there would not be significant expansion of settlements into the West Bank, and of course they continue pretty much every day in the 30 years that have passed since. So the idea that Oslo's over, Oslo from the Israeli side never happened, and it goes again back to that point about the West Bank. If this is a war against Hamas, then explain to me why more than 240 people in the West Bank have been killed. Explain to me why almost 1,500 Palestinians in the West Bank have been arrested. You have to explain that. Oh, it's Hamas. That's what they'll say. I did GB News yesterday with Matthew Goodwin. They'll say, well, it's Hamas. Well, the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, they don't get on very well. So you have to please explain that to me. But it's not about Hamas. It's about, as he's very open and honest about, it's about the ethnic expulsion of Palestinian people from Israel, particularly from, right now, Gaza. There's clearly a concerted effort to move people out of there, but the West Bank too, which is iterative, it's been incremental, and it's ongoing. It was before October 7th, and it will continue long after. So it's a stupid question, really. It just shows the level of political coverage and debate in this country. Is Oslo over? The Israelis they've not adhered to Oslo, okay? A very sort of strange question to ask. Now, why has Hateveli let the cat out of the bag? One answer might be, well, she's stupid. She's an idiot. She's a zealot. That's what zealots do. They can't hold their tongue. The clever thing is to say, well, of course, say something without saying it, right? She could have done that, but she didn't. I guess the counter argument is that this is political. She thinks there's going to be an election in Israel soon, and that this is exactly the kind of messaging she would need to project if she wants to win over the increasingly influential right-wing Israeli electorate. And it is increasingly right-wing. We can talk about Zionism and various aspects of it, but I think about 60%, there was a great survey I reported on a few years ago from Novara Media, 60% of Israelis basically said they hate Arabs, they don't trust them, etc., Palestinian Arabs, and that rose to 70% amongst the young. And if you look at, for instance, Haredim, 1% of the Israeli population in 1947, now it's a really significant number. It's around, I think, maybe about 20%, hovering around that. Ultra-Orthodox communities, who are the sort of the electoral bedrock of people like Ben Gvir. So this is the emerging coalition in Israeli politics, which has dragged Netanyahu and Likud even further left. He's always been a right-wing, further right rather. He's always been a right-wing politician, but even further to the right. And it's those people that arguably Hateveli is now signaling to us, like a bat signal. We will not recognize a potential state of Palestine. Of course, if she wants to run and she wants to appeal to the exact same people as Ben Gvir, then that's what she needs to say. So it's interesting, isn't it? There's two sort of schools of thought here. One is that she's just a zealot, she can't hold her tongue. Another is that actually she knows exactly what she's doing. And look, I think Israeli politicians will do what they have to do to get elected. That's how politicians work. But it really is incumbent now, Michael, on the British media to report this accurately and be perfectly honest that Israel does not want a two-state solution. They don't. Okay, you've got the Jewish Labour movement and Labour. You've got David Lammy. You've got people in the Tory party all pretending that the state of Israel and its government wants a two-state solution. It doesn't. It hasn't for a very long time. The difference is that Hateveli and Ben Gvir, they're being quite open about it. And finally, Michael, the point of liberal Zionism is that Jews have a state. Okay. Now, people have a range of views on this, but that's what it means. It means they have a state, so they can't see the horrors of the Holocaust and of 19th century events in Russia, in Europe, repeat themselves. Okay, that's the point of Israel. That's the point of Zionism. You have a homeland for Jewish people so that they could be protected as a people. But it also means you want to be a quote-unquote normal state. Jews just want Israel to be a normal state. Israeli Jews, they just want to be a normal state. Well, if you want to be a normal state, you're going to have borders. Okay, you're going to have internationally recognized borders. And by having settlements built every single day in the West Bank, you're not having internationally recognized borders. These are illegal settlements. So on the one hand, people say, well, why do you want to treat Israel so differently? They're just defending themselves. They're just a state. Why talk about them and not these other states? They're quasi-state in some ways because they want to be treated like a nation state in certain respects, but they refuse to behave like one in others. And this is hugely important, Michael, because you can't on the one hand say, we just want to be a normal state, and on the other, behave completely unlike any normal state out there.
Yeah, I mean, people always say, well, why do you hold Israel to a higher standard? What other country in the world is expanding settlements in another country, outside of its internationally recognized border? I mean, you might be able to say Russia in Ukraine, although even that's unclear. Are they building permanent settlements in Ukraine? They're definitely breaking international law. Let's be clear about that. But whether it's that law is somewhat unclear. I mean, maybe there are other examples around the world, but there's definitely no one who's been doing it for 56 years, which is how long Israel has been expanding settlements outside of their internationally recognized borders. So there is something exceptional about that. Why do you treat Israel so differently to other states? Well, Israel is in many ways quite different to other states because not many other states I can't think of any, are doing sort of settler colonialism as we speak. There's a debate about whether Israel is settler colonialism within the 1967 borders. Lots of people I really respect say that it is, but everyone can agree, liberal, conservative, every international lawyer in the world should be able to agree that what's going on in the West Bank is settler colonialism. That's not controversial. And they've been doing that for 56 years. Right? And they said, why are you treating us differently? Why are you treating us differently? Because you're doing something pretty goddamn different.